the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and we have Craig Young with us today. Welcome back, Craig. Good to see you.
Kia ora, Paul. Thanks for having us.
Maybe you can remind listeners where you fit into this big wide world of technology in New Zealand.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of the Technology Users Association, or you may know it as Two Hands. It's been around for a long time. And we're a user group when it comes to the use of technology by New Zealanders, whether it's New Zealand businesses or individuals. But that's where we focus in. We focus in on the use of the technology rather than necessarily the development of it in New Zealand.
Oh, always good to catch up. Looking forward to your opinions. Big thank you, of course, to our show partners, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. Lots of ground to cover off today. There's a chunk of New Zealand related topics I'm very keen to delve into. Some government guidance around paying ransoms for cyber incidents. Looking a little bit into something unusual that 1NZ have done, which nobody's reported on, but it caught my attention when I noticed it. With the recent rebrand, Starlink and its new role in Scott Base, and the role of Kiwi engineers in charging electric cars wirelessly. And then obviously things going on the global front as well. So, well, let's jump in to start with on the EV charging front. We've been reading about the role of New Zealanders in this wireless charging of electric vehicles, and of course New Zealand has quite a history when it comes to wireless charging. Power by proxy that I guess came out of Auckland University research, ended up being acquired by Apple. They're very much that team very much contributing heavily to the development of wireless charging and to the wireless charging standards that we have today, that are utilized across all the different smartphone brands, and I guess that's predominantly where we see wireless charging and the chargers and so on with the Qi charging technology. And we have long heard about this possibility for electric charging vehicles, but it sort of caught my attention when I saw some media coverage suggesting that we could have wireless charging vehicles as soon as next year, 2024. What are your thoughts on this? You've been I guess across this for some time as well.
Yeah. I've been looking at it. I mean, I think the nirvana obviously is that people want to be able to travel long distances, and to do that, you've got to be able to charge electric vehicles. So the nirvana is being able to charge on the go, right? So there's long been talk about inductive charging within roads. We know how long roads take to build in New Zealand, so it's going to be a long time before someone rips something up to put that in. But the latest discussion and talk is about putting them into car parks, which obviously is a lot easier, and also your car's going to be sitting there, so you just drive in, get out. You're not going to worry about plugs and walk away. I think the big thing is as fast as we go on the car parks and having it in the ground. It's about also the vehicles being able to do it, right? Because I'm not aware, maybe it's just me at the moment, of any vehicle that could perhaps charge wirelessly just yet. If it was anything, you'd think it would be in a Tesla. I see that, I don't know, as an aside, the government has, the clean car rebate has gone on to 80,000 Teslas in the last year or two since it's been launched. So that's a lot of cars.
It is a lot. That's a lot of cars. I didn't realize it was that.
I'm not sure it's 80,000 cars. It's 80,000.
80.
Yeah. Out
So I
of
think
300
what
million,
would
I
be
think 80,000.
80 million,
Yeah.
80 million out of the funds, maybe.
Anyway, yeah, 80
Yeah.
million. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
That
80
might
million
be
has
the
gone
number.
into paying
Yep.
for Teslas.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's definitely where you want to get to, right? So as a user, you want to be able to just pull up, turn your car off, and then when you come back, it's charged. You haven't had to worry about different types of chargers, different types of plugs, having the cord with you, whether it's a fast charger or not. I mean, imagine this: you're going to Wellington, you pull up at McDonald's in Taupo, you just pull in to the car park and go and have your burger, maybe walk around the foreshore. When you come back, it's all charged. You didn't have to worry about finding a specific park. So it'd be great to be able to do that, wouldn't it?
It sounds like a dream to
Doesn't
me. Yeah, look, that difference between putting it in the road, which seems, that seems like an insurmountable, challenge if we were to look in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, right? Because that would be, it's just sort of, it seems impossible. Yet, of course, we take for granted so much technology that a few years ago, seemed impossible. But to me, that would seem like would seem like a very much a long term mechanism to work out to charge in the roads. Charging in car parks, even then, I would still think that probably in the next sort of 5 years, if we were to see it, it would likely be dedicated to very specific car parks rather than all of them. But if we look further out, when of course electric vehicles will become the norm, then I can imagine there would probably be some places that may make that choice and say we'll pay for every single car park to do it. Interesting, on the weekend, I just curious, in Mount Roskill there is the land that was previously Foodstuffs headquarters in the North Island, which when they moved to their new absolutely humongous new HQ and warehouse, that they put that land on the market. Now, I haven't actually looked up and found out who's acquired it, but I did notice that it was wide open for anybody to trespass on the weekend. No comments as to exactly where I stuck my nose, but if they've got some footage, they'll see a Tesla inspecting their car park, and there would have been, just trying to do the numbers, maybe 80 to 100 car parks in front of the warehouse. The warehouse that's been built, there's no branding or anything on it just yet. 20 of those were marked as EV charging spots. I can't think of anywhere I've been in New Zealand with 20 EV parking spots. Now, I'm imagining this is largely for fleet, because there was a barrier arm of sorts that what did not obstruct at this point in time, and so I was able to potentially, don't want to admit too much in the way of criminal activities on here, but potentially have a look. And they hadn't set up the charges, although their warehouse, which incidentally the doors were wide open and there was nobody there. I saw what looked like a high end EV charger unit, sort of what you see somewhere where you go and they've got maybe a 300 sort of kilowatt type level charger. There was one of those sitting inside this wide open unpatrolled warehouse. I was kind of thinking, boy, if they leave it like this too long, the neighborhood hooligans are maybe going to turn up and cause some havoc. But a lot of money is going into doing and putting that sort of infrastructure in right now. A big deal to change it to wireless, and you need, as you were highlighting, like who's going to do it, Tesla, whoever. I think BMW, if I recall correctly, have done some testing down this track, but it's a big deal, and I imagine quite a few years for us to flip from one to the other, and then you need some sort of smart communications between these things, so that you just pull up and it knows how to bill you or what have you. I don't imagine that the early trend with EV charging is going to continue, where charging's just going to, power's going to be given away for free for much longer.
I think the place that I've seen the most electric, the charging EV parks is when you visit places like, or businesses like Vector or Orion Network. So they're the ones that are, because it's their fleets. You're right.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I think it's one of those ones where it'll take longer than you think, but it'll be here quicker than you think.
Well, these things sneak up on us, don't they?
They do.
That's the reality. Now, Starlink for Scott Base. I thought this was it was actually sort of interesting timing in a way that we've just heard about it, and it's been announced by Antarctica New Zealand on their website. So 10 times their the bandwidth of what they had previously. That's a pretty good improvement. You can start doing all sorts of new things from your frozen HQ.
It's a huge step up, right? If you think of that being the last place on Earth which is the most remote, and the hardy souls that winter over, without seeing the sun, without coming home, it must have been tough, all those years ago when they started, where they could only have one phone call a week to their family, etc. So to have something like Starlink, now of course we don't know the performance of the service and how it will go through winter with storms, etc. But they do have obviously a boost from having what is cutting edge technology for them. So obviously they'll be able to talk to family, they'll be able to do upload work. I think that was one of the things I read around the articles, being able to send back photos to New Zealand to base, Antarctic base in Christchurch. But the one that I thought was the funniest one was they'll be able to Netflix and chill, basically, won't they?
Chill.
I've been holding on to that joke for quite a while. It's obviously going to change significantly the work that they do down there too.
Yeah. Look, it's incredibly life-changing in a situation like that. I would imagine. I mean, just a really, really big leap forward for them. So
but I also think it shows how quickly we've got into using this service called Starlink. It's only a year or two ago that it was actually launched globally, and then New Zealand was fortunate in that we had a constellation of satellites that ran up the country. So it's been around a while in New Zealand, but we were one of the first to be able to access it. So obviously it loops across Antarctica as well. So I just think it's another example of you are slowly the areas that you can go to without being connected are dwindling over time. So here's another example. I mean, obviously in this example, it's a great step forward for them. But there are other places I think where I start to think maybe I don't want to be connected, but for health and safety, it's a great step forward. And again, for Antarctica, health and safety will be another positive for them.
Yeah. Well, and then you start to think, well, what One NZ and other telcos will we already know they're aiming to all really have some sort of satellite-based mobile connectivity in the future as well. So it makes you wonder about, hey, just take your mobile phone to Scott Base, Antarctica, wherever you want in the world, and will you have some sort of coverage? And I guess the answer is yes, quite possibly you will in the future.
Well, there'd hardly be anybody surely listening to this that hasn't seen an advert either through a streaming service or live on broadcast TV for SpaceX and One. Coming the big news when they relaunched when they launched the brand was this deal with Starlink. And it is a big deal. It does change coverage in New Zealand. Initially, it's late 24. It's probably only texting and maybe some early types of voice. We don't know yet because Starlink have only just started to think about launching their second generation of satellites. But it could be quite a game changer, in quite a few spaces, in quite a few places. Yeah.
Yeah, look, it is. It's one of those big changes that's coming. Now, ransom payments, when it comes to organizations having cyber security incidents, so often it is ransomware, and as we saw with the Waikato District Health Board, it has a really, really big impact. And one of the things with the Waikato District Health Board incident, looking in from the outside, was that they said, no, we're not going to pay you ransom. And I totally get that, but it was interesting to see that we've got very clear guidance online now, and I'm looking at the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet website, and they're making it quite clear that government agencies should not be paying ransoms, and they're really encouraging that message, across the board. But if we sort of counter this with some of the things we're hearing elsewhere, and I saw a report, and I'm not sure of the source recently, that was talking about something around 60%, I think in the UK, of ransomware incidents were ending in a ransom being paid. And so, and there are other figures all over the place that have sort of have been shared. It is such a challenging situation for an organisation that gets hit by this, and the flip side of, say, Waikato District Health Board, not paying, is millions and millions in terms of the impact and costs on the organisation, and of course that element of people's confidential health data, being leaked online. So there really, there's no winners, in these situations, unfortunately, other than the criminals. And that's not a nice thing to have to say, but it's the reality. But I think it's fair guidance for people to consider. They also highlight around getting independent legal advice and professional advice and so on. And I do wonder whether, how far away are we from, say, a New Zealand entity that pays a ransom, then getting hit because they've broken sanctions, because the money's gone to North Korea, or to Russia, right? And which is, probably two of the most common places where the money from these ransom situations is going to. Obviously, it tends to be paid in cryptocurrency, so it's not a normal payment, but it is still a payment.
I have a gut feeling that, putting aside the sanctions thing, I have a gut feeling that there are likely to be a number of private sector organisations in New Zealand that have paid ransoms to get access to their. I have no basis on what to do that or sources, but if you are
you are correct.
If you're a reasonably sized organisation and you're locked out and you're private sector, you've got no requirement to report it, because if it's not a privacy breach, then that perhaps you look at it at a risk level and you go, it's cheaper. Maybe it's not the right word, but the risk level is pay the ransom and get access again. And then I've heard other stories and of organisations that have not paid their ransom, but that's because they've been prepared. So there's a high school in Hutt Valley. Well, if they followed the government's guidance anyway. They wouldn't pay. They didn't, but they were very fortunate that they had extremely good backups that they could rebuild from over a long weekend. So it was a lot of work to get the school back up and running. Now, that's not a private sector organisation, but, they were prepared. So I think there's a double message in here. It's all very well for the guidance to be, don't pay the ransom, but you need to be prepared, right? You need to have done all that work and be ready. So if something does happen, you're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, and look, the backups are obviously a very very important part of the puzzle, but there's also all of the steps that can be taken that lower your risk versus another organisation of getting hit. Now they have also made it clear on their website as well around those sanction situations. And so they refer to the Russia Sanctions Act 2022 or the United Nations Act of 1946, which can carry criminal penalties of, get this, up to both 7 years in prison and or a fine of $100,000 for individuals, and or a fine of up to $1 million for organizations. So, there's, the threat of 7 years hanging over your head. You'd want to be really, really sure where your funds are going if you're paying a ransom. And that is easier said than done, especially when these things are moving at at pace, and you're not maybe in most situations, an organisation wants to get back up and running very, very quickly, and of course, not everyone's going to have access to the knowledge of quite where their funds would be heading to, without some pretty professional assistance. So let's be cautious out there, folks. Let's protect ourselves as much as we can practically do.
Just on a personal level, I'm not talking about ransomware, but I don't know about you and people listening. I've been seeing a serious increase in phishing attacks. I think I've had 4 texts in the last 3 weeks, trying to get us down that track. So it's not just at the large corporate level, is it? It's around at the individual level.
Everywhere.
Yeah. And I think it's, those of us that are a little bit in the know need to be talking to people who in our families and whānau that perhaps aren't so quite upskilled, to be very careful about when something comes in. If it looks real but it doesn't feel real, question it, So be careful out there.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I had a discussion with a team member who took a call from somebody, last week, and had passed on a link to a website and so on. And I was just, inquiring, as to a little bit of detail about this phone call. It's something we're probably quite used to doing, taking a call, someone that's trying to sell something to us. We can have a look at their website and so on. I was very, pleased when I got the feedback of, opened it up in this sort of virtual environment where it was, all safe and protected and so on, was able to check. And it's like, well, if you're going to do it, that's, that's the way to do it in a sandboxed and safe environment. But generally you want to be very, very careful about these things. My son this morning showed me a message he'd got around, was it toll road, payments, which seems to have gone out very, very wide. So this is another reason to talk to those, people in your, broader family that may not be so tech savvy, and sort of, when they see a message like that, assume it's legitimate from the legitimate party. So we were delving into what some of the risks were with those sorts of things. And if there's a 0-day vulnerability at the same time, and they happen to be using that type of attack vector, then you could be in a scenario where, clicking that link means your device is compromised without even, entering any details or what have you. And we've even heard of vulnerabilities in the past where just getting the message on your device, you might not even see the message, potentially can compromise a device. So it's a very complicated world in which we operate, isn't it, Craig?
Yeah, and I'll just finish that conversation off with a little bit of a heads up. Next week, we're releasing our 2023 digital priorities for Aotearoa. So this is where we interview 20 plus CIOs at the beginning of each year and say, what's top of mind for you this coming year? We started it in 2021 every year, and it's no surprise it'll be again one of the top 6 priorities that they're looking at this year is security. Security and privacy. It's top of mind for them. In fact, if anything was probably more top of mind for them this year, that they're seeing this happening. So it's not going to go away. Not going to go away at all.
Now, on to the next topic. I did some wondering when I looked at the One NZ's new Twitter handle after their rebrand, and it reminded me of what happened with Chorus. When Chorus started out, they had a Twitter handle of Chorus Fan, and they made a call. I thought that was a really nice sort of friendly, thing, but they decided to change to being a bit more, corporate-y and so on. So, and this reflects some of the, I think, possibly some similar reasoning for Vodafone. So if you go to their Twitter handle, which is One NZ Official on Twitter, twitter.com/One NZ Official if you're on the web, and you will see they have the staggering count of 469 followers today. Their previous Twitter handle had about 70,000 followers. So with Twitter, you do get that choice you can rename your handle. There's probably some restrictions around it. Most platforms do. I can't remember any particular ones that Twitter, any major ones that Twitter has around a rename. But my expectation was that the Vodafone NZ one would become One NZ Official or whatever their final new handle was. But no, they've dumped about 70,000 followers by killing off the old account. And interestingly here, what they're saying is those that they engage, most with on Twitter tend to be sort of media folks and techie folks, and it's not necessarily as much the sort of the broad public. So their feedback was that, look, they're not actually aiming to attract that level of following on Twitter. They don't want to build up Twitter as a service channel. So now Facebook and other channels are where that's happening for them.
I might just interject there for a second, though. In that, it's interesting they say they don't want to build it up as a service channel, but their CEO, Jason Paris, is very active on Twitter.
That's true.
Very call me, talk to me, message me.
Right. So
I'll fix it. So
it is
a little bit of mixed messaging.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. So I wonder whether there's going to have to be a change for Jason. I'm not sure that there could be. So yeah, they might have to put some social media staff to work Jason's account if it all migrates across to people atting, at mentioning Jason Paris. So not that I'm suggesting that to all our followers.
No.
Actually, what I would say is Geek Zone is a really good place to go and engage, with the telcos and a bunch of their staff usually on Geek Zone. You are, of course, always welcome. Any topic that we've been mentioning on the New Zealand Tech Podcast, you're always welcome to give us a reply after the episode. And I noticed that happened after last week's episode. Somebody having a challenge with I think an ultra fast broadband install. They were maybe 5 months down the track. And so if you do hear anything on an episode and you're wondering, I'd like Paul to know this, or to comment, or wonder if he can point me in the right direction, or anybody else that's been on the show, do feel free to reply back, because for most weeks we were doing a video live stream supporting the recorded, traditional podcast, then the whole episode's up there, and you can just reply, directly back. So feel free to do that. But I thought, that was really interesting. And one of the things they highlighted is they got rid of, inactive accounts, bots, what have you, that might have been following them. And so, starting from scratch, they I'm picking likely to have a higher engagement rate. They said their engagement rate was not that big comparatively for the 70,000 followers that they had previously. But some interesting learnings from 1NZ there.
Yeah, it would have been an interesting conversation, I thought, the day when they were working out the handle, and the marketing person going, we want it nice and simple, really short, easy to find, and somebody with a bit of nous in the social media area going, well, no, because it's easy to find, then the bots get in and all that. So where's that balance that you find in between there? So, it would have been interesting to be a fly on the wall at that conversation.
Yeah, and very hard to get, new good names on a platform like, Twitter in 2023, when, particularly something short like 1NZ, of course, is going to be long gone.
I don't know if anyone else has got 2and CEO, but that's mine. And just coming back to UFB ones, I'm really interested in those stories about long delays in fibre installs. I'll just plug that here.
Yeah.
So if anyone's got any, flick them through, because we want to do a bit of work in that space, because that is our DNA. We are the Technology Users Association, and we're looking at all this
the Telecommunications Users Association. So
it's still deep in our DNA. And look, at that level, you can't do all the stuff we do. You can't get on the cloud. You can't, unless you can get connected. So, it's all tied in. So send me those stories, people.
Yep. That's good. Now, next up, few things that caught my attention. Now, sometimes with these stories, you wonder whether someone's just trying to get some free press. But a 3D printing company in the US has had some, I guess, a little bit of attention. CNN and elsewhere, company, 3D printing architecture company. They're called Icon. And really, they're based in the US. Their CEO and co-founder, Jason Ballard, is a Texan who's very excited about all the stuff of 3D printing, and is trying to share that they're the company preparing to build on the moon. On the lunar surface.
Right.
So I think, look, when you look at the role of 3D printing, I don't think to me the moon or Mars are sort of the things that I've been have had at the forefront of my mind, because we've got much more pressing needs here on Earth with and close to home. In New Zealand, when it comes to the cost of housing and poverty gaps and so on. So that sort of caught me a little bit by surprise. But if you do actually think around, well, how do you go and build on a moon or on another planet? Then you want to do that as autonomously as possible, unless you can take something ready built and drop it onto a surface, which is probably much easier said than done. So 3D printing probably makes a huge amount of sense, and therefore most of the imagery that we've seen of bases on the moon and other places is probably all completely off, because it doesn't think about that technological approach.
Well, I've never been to the moon, but I have met Buzz Aldrin many, many years ago when he came to New Zealand.
That's cool.
He was in New Zealand for an event, but I didn't ask him. But just coming back to this 3D printing, my first thought was, well, wouldn't you have to take everything with you to build? And then I thought, hang on, there's a lot of dust on the moon that you could use as an input. So maybe it's not as far-fetched as we think.
Yeah, well, they've got Icon have got known for creating houses apparently using a high strength concrete that they call lavacrete. And basically it's built up. I guess it's a form of additive, manufacturing where it gets built up into walls and so on. And probably most of us have seen some videos of some of that sort of 3D printing, or I don't know what you call it, additive manufacturing built buildings. So it has seemed to move at a sort of a slower pace than maybe some of us would have expected. But there's still action going on in that front. So I think it'll be interesting to see exactly how that plays out and develops.
Well, I suppose what you really want, this may not be the way that you end up building on the moon, but what you want is those organizations like NASA and the people who are going to go, that they do look wide and far on unique and far-thinking people on what can be done. So they're not just captured. And I think that's what's happened with SpaceX and Boeing. NASA's gone, well, we can't do everything ourselves, so we're going to talk to others who may be able to do it better. So maybe this is an example where they go, okay, we don't know the answer. Somebody else must have the answer. Let's go and find it. Yeah.
Yep. Of course, Zuru, we know them mostly for their toys, but they're doing a bunch of work in this area, and I think have invested a lot of money over quite a number of years now. And so there's a bunch of people sort of beavering away on this 3D printing front, and being able to sort of build bespoke things with, in some cases, sort of off-site manufacturer, sometimes sort of 3D printing. I'm not sure of the exact mix of how that will look for Zuru, but they look to be applying some very innovative thinking to some of the housing challenges anyway. So that'll be fascinating to watch. Now, I saw on the autonomous driving front, and on the what would you call it? The what's the terminology for the assistive technology to keep us safe. The term is kind of dropped out of my my head, but I guess the modern safety techniques that that we currently have in play. And there was some interesting data coming through when it came to Tesla's success from a safety perspective. And so I thought this was interesting. So and Tesla just recently shared these figures. So they were talking about the number of accidents that passenger vehicles would have. In this case, per million miles driven. This was for last year. And so across the total fleet of vehicles in the US, the average number of accidents, vehicular accidents, as it calls them, was 1.53 across the entire fleet. So, for every million miles, well, I guess if you wanted to make that a round figure, you'd say for every 2 million miles driven, there were three accidents. But they've got it based on a per million of 1.53. And then the Tesla figures. So Tesla's figures are a lot lower than that. So for just their standard vehicles without their active safety stuff enabled, was a little bit under half that. Those with their FSD beta, which is the so-called full self-driving software, with that actually engaged, largely off motorways, which of course motorway driving is very different, and probably a lot lower risk than normal
Yep.
driving from an accidents or number of accidents percentage, was under half that. So that was 0.31 accidents per million miles. And so when you think of FSD, that's actually when if that's engaged, that's the vehicle effectively driving itself, right?
Yeah.
So they're showing a number there that's dramatically lower than what is normal with humans driving, and then their number for Tesla vehicles with autopilot engaged, which tends to mostly be on the motorways, of 0.18 accidents per million miles, which is it's not quite a tenth of the normal, but it's and I'm sure there is quite a difference in terms of distance on motorways for accidents versus on normal roads. But it's the first time I've seen it split up like this, and it makes me feel encouraged around where we're going with autonomy and the latest technology that's going into vehicles. Obviously, it's not just Tesla vehicles that are getting this type of technology, and there's a good bit of competition going on. But of course, Tesla owners get the advantage of their continuous software updates, which are less common amongst other brands.
And I think it'd be interesting to see those numbers for some of those other brands. I recall, good 4 or 5 years ago, on a phone call with somebody who was in their Volvo going through the city on the motorway, being able to allow the vehicle to drive itself through. Now, obviously, things have come on since then. So, but what it does do is the numbers are really good, because what it does is change the conversation, because most of the conversation often is, there was a Tesla crash, so it must be bad because it was driving itself. Well, actually, yes, but there's lots of crashes that happen with people driving vehicles, and we don't get, we don't hear all of those crashes. I mean, certainly in New Zealand, you hear about the ones where somebody dies, because that's, we're small enough for that. So, yeah, I think this is encouraging to see these sorts of numbers come through. And of course, Tesla's, they're all connected, so they're recording this stuff as well. So I think it bodes well for us thinking about, yes, there is benefit in these types of technologies being in our vehicles. It's going to save lives.
And if not that I've been asked to contribute anything at a government level on this topic, but we've had this recent thing over the last year or so on this sort of road to toll, to get the road toll down to zero. It's this type of technology, I think, that gets us there. Probably more than any one other thing. But it is a combination of things, and I think we shouldn't forget that the road toll, if you average it out over over 50 years, has kept heading down, and technology will play I think a very, very big part in that picture. But we've still got to be smart around how we use our vehicles and so on, and we still do some dumb stuff on our roads in New Zealand from time to time, and we still have probably some challenges with some of our roads, shall we say?
Yeah.
All right, couple of other topics that we wanted to cover off, and we'll get to parrots making video calls in a moment, but Samsung's earnings have plunged in a massive way. Their lowest quarterly earnings were just announced late last week. The lowest in 14 years, I think, since 2009. So there's some interesting indicators there. Some of it is very much specific to Samsung, and trends around memory, of which they sell a lot of. and displays, other aspects there, I think are a signal of probably where the economy's at, and caution that different companies who buy off Samsung are making, and that sort of business to business end, but also there's aspects there on the consumer front, and something we didn't talk about. Maybe it was last week, as a huge drop off in sales of PCs. We saw that huge increase during COVID, or huge demand, and mixed with supply chain issues for laptops, especially, but some really big drop offs in demand for PCs, of talking general personal computers. Apple Mac sales were down in a very significant way. I think we heard that was probably a week or a few back. Apple Mac shipments plummeting. It was about 40%.
Wow.
So they had in the first quarter of 2022, they had sold 6.9 million Macs, and that went down to 4.1 million in the first quarter of 2023.
Yeah, well, look, if I'm, as I mentioned earlier, next week we're releasing our digital priorities report. If I go back a year and look at what CIOs were talking about at the beginning of 2022, it surprised me the number of them that talked about supply chain issues. And that these are very senior people who are worried about, can they get enough PCs and laptops and things. So when that issue rises to the top, you sort of go, well, that's obviously something quite important. That didn't come through this year. Not one of them talked about that. So either the problem's been fixed, which I'm not sure it has been, but also I think that you're right. The economy's down. It is a different working environment now than it was. I think the memory chip thing, I think, you probably found 18 months ago when there was a shortage, people were stockpiling them. They were buying them and keeping them because they didn't know if they were going to be able to get hold of them. So now they're using them in a depressed market. So you can see why someone like Samsung suddenly finds that the demand has dropped off. So I presume they'll come back, but it's quite a fascinating story, isn't it? That we've gone from tight to being plenty.
And that these are some of the challenges of for business, but they do have economic sort of flow-ons. There was one of the articles I read, I think it was Forbes, mentioned that HP did better than the other major PC companies. Their sales only dropped 24.2%. So my goodness, like only it's mind blowing, and it's enough that, I mean, in a lot of areas, an organization or a business's sales drop at that sort of level, that business is gone. But that's happened across the board on that front. So it's certainly not just Samsung that have been impacted, but their figures are fairly shocking. I'm sure for those who hold Samsung stock, but as we've seen before, things will no doubt move in other directions given a little bit of time. Now we must talk about these parrots.
These parrots.
Actually, I think it was Brett Roberts who I saw sharing about this, and it just made me chuckle, and I thought, look, this is fun. We've got to talk about it. So apparently, scientists have taught pet parrots to video call each other, and look, the parrots love it. And this is one of those things where so often a family or individual will have a parrot, maybe on its own, maybe with other parrots, but actually they're very social creatures. So it turns out that they have a a bit of a wild time when they get a chance to be able to video call each other.
I think the thing that got me wasn't just that it's not a human connecting the two parrots together, but they've actually learnt to initiate the video chats themselves. So, the device is there, they can actually make a call. I presume it's only to one other, but I haven't really looked at it, but they can initiate the call and have the chat. So that's even a further step ahead. Obviously, that means that it must be easy to initiate a video chat these days, right? So, that's again something that's occurred in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Zoom,
they would have. I'm sure
FaceTime,
they probably
all those
adjusted it to make it,
sure.
make it, doable by a parrot, or has it got voice recognition Alexa built in? Who knows what's next?
Polly wants a video call.
Yeah, but there you go. If you've got a parrot, somebody else with a parrot, maybe you can try this out for us, and let me know whether the parrots enjoy having a bit of social time.
Do you have to worry about the amount of screen time your parrot's having?
Oh, well, it depends whether they've got homework to do or not.
That's true.
Right? It always impacts these things in my home. Right. So, just thinking with the other things to delve into. There's probably not much else here that we can delve into without taking up a bit too much time. I think we've covered the big things. So yeah, thank you, Craig. Very good to catch up. For folks that are wanting to get plugged into some of the events and the content that's coming out of Two Hands, where do they go?
Yeah, they go to our website, so twohands.org.nz. If you're interested in our Future Leaders program, that's the 18 to 35, it's just flint.nz. I am on Twitter, you're right. Not great on Twitter, but Facebook, Two Hands CEO, and Two Hands, and on LinkedIn is probably the best place, actually. I think we're using LinkedIn as being the place to really talk about what we're up to. Very busy couple of months coming up, talking through cloud, talking through AI, talking through mobile, 5G, all those sorts of things that are coming.
Yep.
So if you're interested, there's lots going on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. Well, and thank you to our show partners, Gorilla Technology, HP, Spark, 2 Degrees, and 1NZ. Now, if you're watching our video, then hey, go and get a podcast app and subscribe, because you'll probably be able to catch up with more episodes that way. We can't always watch the videos live, so it's great whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever app there. If you're listening to the audio, which tends to be our bigger part of our audience, it is worth being able to tap into the live videos, if you're in a position to do so, usually on a Tuesday afternoon. But if you look us up on YouTube, then you can join our followers on YouTube, follow, hit the bell, all that sort of stuff, so you get the alert, because it's probably live that most people would listen. And you can do a similar thing on Twitter. Again, with Twitter, I tend to find hit the bell when you're following someone if you want to get those alerts. And that's under NZ Tech Podcast. For LinkedIn, which is probably one of the most active places where I am, sort of social media these days. Again, if you follow me or connect, if you want to connect with me, you're welcome. Just put a note in there that you're an NZ Tech Podcast listener. And again, I think you can hit the bell on LinkedIn to get those priority notifications. I think you can anyway. I'm trying to think. We use these platforms, so much.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't remember exactly how you do that on an individual. But I'm pretty sure. Yep, just having a look now. There's a bell on the top of a profile when you visit someone. So that's us for this week. Thank you again for joining us, Craig, and
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening in. And we'll catch you again next week. and I'm off later this week to get a bit of an update of what's happening in the South Island in Christchurch from a tech and an innovation perspective down there, where they're doing some interesting things. So I'll look forward to sharing a little bit of that possibly on the next episode. So yeah,
I'll look forward to it.
All right, thanks. Cheers.
Thank you.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.